And we're live.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going, David? How are you tonight?
I'm all right. Tonight we're going to talk about the Shanley Hotel.
Sounds good.
And it's going to be my turn to guide the wagon. So luckily I've been to the Shanley. I've had an infatuation with it for years, finally got to go, and it was an incredible experience. I'll get to that a little bit later. The first thing I want to do is, like everything else, we're going to go through the history. I'm going to give you the history lesson. So nestled in the foothills of the Shawangunk Mountains is the small town of Napanoch, New York. 56 Main Street is one of the largest structures in the tiny hunting town, and that is the Shanley Hotel. This is actually one of the earliest known pictures of the Shanley right here. The hotel's history is storied. Built in 1845 by Mr. Thomas Rich, the hotel bore his name, Rich's Hotel. The hotel's convenience to the railroad allowed for those that wanted to get away from the cities to travel into the countryside and enjoy the luxuries of one of the most beautiful public houses to be found in any section of the country, which included a high-end gentleman's club as well as the now famous or infamous bordello in its original form. This is actually the main street of Napanoch, a historical picture. You can actually see the Shanley on the left down in the distance, in left center. You can see the outside of it. The hotel changed ownerships and names numerous times over its initial years. Of particular note, in March of 1895, a fire ripped through the town of Napanoch. It started in another building and actually destroyed a good deal of the town. And it actually burned the Shanley what would become the Shanley to the ground. But it was rebuilt and back in operation by November of that same year. So about 8 months later, it was rebuilt into effectively what we see today of the main structure, and back in business in 8 months by then owner Adolf Widener. 11 years later, James Shanley, an Irish immigrant and successful restaurateur and businessman from New York, purchased the hotel in October of 1906, added a few creature comforts like a bowling alley, a barber shop, which becomes key in the paranormal or in the spiritual history of the hotel later on, and a billiard room. So with that, you move into the story of the Shanleys themselves, the family, and the tragedies that befell them and the hotel. James Shanley married Beatrice in 1910. They were well loved by the communities. The Shanleys were quick to make friends, to include famous friends like Thomas Edison, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and his first lady Eleanor, who became a dear friend to Mrs. Shanley and actually has a room still named after her today in the hotel, because she would stay with the Shanleys at the Shanley when FDR would come up on hunting trips. Unfortunately, tragedy and the Shanley Hotel would go hand in hand moving forward. In 1912, the Shanleys had their first child, a daughter who sadly lived just shy of 6 months. They would go on to have 2 sons, but neither of which would live to see their first birthday. Beatrice's sister also lived in the hotel with them, but she would pass from influenza in 1918, around the time that Ani Booby did, as we bring it back to our residency. Tragedy at the hotel was not just confined to the Shanleys. The hotel's barber, 3-year-old daughter Rosie, that was this young lady right here. She was 3. She wandered across the road and fell into a well, where she died, and her grief-stricken family moved back to the city, and Rosie was to become one of the most famous spirits spotted in and around the hotel. There's also the story of the nearby doctor's son, 5-year-old Walter, who jumped onto the running board back in the days of cars having running boards. He jumped on the running board of his dad's car. He fell and was run over. Although he didn't pass away from those injuries, many believe that it's his spirit that they call Jonathan that plays in the attic of the Shanley. So after that, after Beatrice's sister died, the Shanleys were left with her 2 daughters to raise. So they actually did end up having children running around, but they weren't, they were her sisters. So I guess nieces or nieces running around. So gentlemen's clubs and alcohol go together moving forward into the 20s. However, with the onset of Prohibition, the government had quite different ideas about how to have a good time, always wanting to provide for the customers. James Shanley became involved with a notorious bootlegger, John Powers, in order to provide alcohol to the guests in the speakeasy that was in the hotel. They actually used to hide the liquor under the floorboards in the hotel. The Shanley was raided in February of 1932, leading to Mr. Powers and Mr. Shanley appearing in federal court. However, there is no record of any jail time or even a fine, but it probably helps when you're appearing in federal court and one of your friends is the president. James Shanley died in 1937. An outpouring of grief and condolences flowed from the community to Beatrice and even from the White House as the Roosevelts sent their regards. They were unable to attend the funeral, but they sent their regards and their condolences. Beatrice would own the hotel until 1944 when she would sell it to Al Hazen, and Beatrice herself would live into 1961. November 27th, 1961 is when she passed away. So several owners would come into possession of the Shanley between 61 and present day. That time includes a time of the hotel lying abandoned for nearly a decade, mismanagement, rebuilding, renovation, and rebirth. Most recently in 2017, the Shanley was actually condemned and it was sold. And in 1918, was undergoing renovation and opened again under new management and remains open and thriving today. So the Shanley has 100, about 100 and 1845 to now, almost 200 years of history running through it. And when you start talking about the spirits of the Shanley, there's plenty to go around. So I actually got to visit the Shanley shortly after they reopened in 2018. I haven't had the opportunity to go back, but our group has. Matt and Tim and Erica went back in last year, and with a couple of other members. I think Chloe went with them as well. But when I was there, it was right after they reopened, and in a bit of serendipity, it was 3 weeks after Jerry and Melissa, our owner, like the John Nick's Paranormal ownership, had actually been there to see it and to stay there. So when I went, you got the tour and we got the stories. The first thing you ended up having to do was go into the gift shop and sign a waiver. There were numerous rules on the waiver to include no making jokes about Eleanor Roosevelt. If you've seen Wedding Crashers, you know what I'm referencing. At the time, our hosts had told us that they had some guests in there that had made some Wedding Crashers type jokes about Eleanor Roosevelt, and they said things got pretty bad pretty quick. So they requested that you not do that. There were no spirit boards or anything like that allowed to be used there. And then we gathered in the great room is what they call it. Now, the Shanley, as it stands, consists of two structures. The structure that you see right here is the main hotel in the main building. If there is another picture, like a profile picture where you can see the second structure that comes out of the back, it's connected by the great room. And that right there we go. So on the pictures on the right-hand side, you can see the second structure in the back. Now, the first floor of that second structure is the gentleman's quarters, and the second floor is the brothel. Is where the brothel was, and that in between that kind of connection right there is where the steps are, etc. And it's also where the altar room is, and you go up the stairs into the brothel, and the brothel has 3 rooms and a sitting area. And that's where our tour started. So we got there, and actually our tour was conducted by Ghost Hunts, the now defunct Ghost Hunts USA. We had 2 fantastic mediums that worked with us that night. We had, I don't remember their names. It's been quite some time, but I remember they were fantastic. And we started out up in the brothel. up there. They put me on Annie's bed. There's three rooms. I don't remember the girls' names, but it came with the stories. Of course, every place like this comes with its own story, or in this case, group of stories. So up there in the brothel, I remember Annie because I was put in Annie's room. Annie enjoyed men sitting on her bed, and she would touch you and was supposed to touch you, etc. And it was funny. It was my first experience with a spirit box, number one. And there was a guy there with our tour group that was periscoping, so he was live streaming everything. I'm certain if you searched it out, you could probably find it. But we were sitting there, and the young lady that I was with tried to endear herself to the spirits up there, so she let them know that she was a dancer and hoping to get some more activity from that. And I was just sitting in the bed, and they kept asking me, is she touching you? Do you feel anything? And I was like, no. And it went on for quite some time. And finally they asked, like, Annie, why aren't you touching David? Do you not like him? And through the spirit box, it was the first time I've heard ever, again, it was my first experience. But through the spirit box, you have this female voice come through and say, he's an asshole. And they stopped, and they asked to repeat itself, and it actually repeated itself. And the guy that was periscoping it, he's like, "You realize you just got called a name by a spirit?" I'm like, "It probably isn't the first time. Won't be the last. Let's just move on." But the story, the endearing story from up there, well, not the endearing, but the one that lived on was the story of Frank. He was the bouncer. So up in that area, you have the spirits of the girls, particularly Annie. And then you have the madam and the bouncer, whose name was Frank. I hope I'm getting all these names correct. But Frank and Annie had a relationship. Frank was African American, according to the story that we were told. He and Annie had a relationship, and then obviously back in a time when that was frowned upon, and they came for him, and he told Annie that she had to deny the relationship, or both of them would end up getting hung. She did, and he met his end in what ended up being in the backyard shortly thereafter. So he haunts his spirit is still there, protecting the girls still, and the madam's is there. From there, we moved on to the gentleman's quarters, which is a large room. And at the time, they were still going through the renovations, so heat was at a premium. And we got into it was the week of Halloween 2018, or the week after, and it was cold. You're in New York, beginning of November, end of October. We had we all got down into the gentleman's quarters, and we were warned that it would be confrontational because women weren't ever allowed in the gentleman's quarters. So through the spirit box, you heard a lot of confrontational adjectives when it came to women, and it specifically singled out the young lady that I was with, because it kept referencing the witch, and she was a practicing, she practiced witchcraft, and it was uncomfortable. And it was at that point where I saw my first shadow person. It was through the thermal. There's a picture of two wingback chairs that we had. This is in the gentleman's quarters, and in the chair on the right, at that point, looking at that's the great room. That's the altar room. There we go. So in the chair on the right, I noticed a temperature anomaly. It was about 55 or 60 degrees in this room, and there was a temperature anomaly of about 70 degrees in that chair. And I asked if anybody else saw it, and someone across the room had said that, you mean the black thing in the chair? So, okay, so I didn't feel like I was going insane. Then everything that we were getting was directing us towards the basement, and with the basement, it was again very confrontational. It was a very confrontational experience in this room, and at one point, whatever was in the chair effectively stood up and walked out. and I asked if anybody else had seen it. And again, somebody behind me confirmed that they indeed saw the black thing get up and walk out. It was dark. We had the lights off, but you can tell the difference. And so the next stop was going to be the basement. And the basement is a unique experience. I have some pictures in here of the basement, that right there. So if you look now, that the first and second pictures are, the middle picture is when you come in, you're looking at this right there, the oil canister and that chair behind it. And if you looked to the left, that extended out into the hotel, or under the hotel, and that little that's the guy periscoping actually right there. And spirit box they had set in there, and they said that they had set that in what they assessed was like an area that they thought was a portal. And I'll be honest, like standing there, at the door with the young lady that I was with, I had my arm around her, and I felt somebody pulling on my arm, and I asked, one of the mediums was standing next to me, and I asked him to stop, and he's like, "No, I'm not doing it. I got both hands in my pocket." And so that freaked me out. And then I walked down there, and I felt incredibly, incredibly tired. And when I looked at the young lady that I was with, she was crying and didn't know. Finally, when she identified that she had been crying, and she asked me if I was tired because I was doing a head bob. I was like, "Yeah, I could just close my eyes and go to sleep." But one of the mediums turned around and said, "Don't, like, you don't want to." So the story that I was given about the basement was that back during the influenza pandemic of 1918, the town of Napanoch is in the mountains. So when winter sets in, you can't break through the ground. If you're trying to bury somebody, you can't break through the ground. So they have to be held somewhere back, especially back in those days. Nowadays we can, but back in those days, you weren't breaking the ground, so you had to store them somewhere. And with the amount of death that flowed with the pandemic, and the basement of the Shanley being the biggest place in the neighborhood, they actually stored the bodies down there. So that's where they had assessed a lot of the spiritual activity or the paranormal activity had come from. So after that, we went back upstairs, and then we went and experienced the Eleanor room, where we had a whole bunch of spirit box activity and such. And then we went up into the attic. Now, the attic now is finished, and you can go up there, and there's that's an actual part of I believe that's part of the like the package now, I think they may have rooms up there now. But when I went, it was completely unfinished. They were still doing everything, redoing everything, and because that was after years of neglect. I had actually tried to go to the Shanley number of times between like 2010 and 2017, and I was told to stay away because it was just not a place to go, not a good place to be, and that it was run down, that it was poorly managed. And then when the new owners picked it up, they completely renovated and they completely changed everything. And it's a fantastic place to be and a fantastic place to explore now. So we spent the evening there. We spent the night as part of the package, as happens with the Shanley. You get when you buy one of their packages, you get a room and you get to stay there. We stayed in the Rose Room, and the Rose Room is it's the biggest room. It's the only room at the time. It was the only room that had a private bath, and it had a clawfoot bathtub. I remember that. Had two little beds in it. I think I have a picture of it in here somewhere. Right there. There it is. And that's the silent room. So the silent room was due to, I believe, I think it was Al Hazen. It was either Al or I don't think it was Sal. I think it was Al that created the silent room, and that's where he would imbibe a few too many of the drinkable spirits at the hotel, and he would go and retire to his room, and it was called the silent room because the guests knew better, and that they had to sneak around the room for fear of waking him up. And then, like I said, on the right is the Rose Room, which is where we stayed. There was actually, you could sleep three in there, and it had its own bathroom. And it was funny, like the rest of that night, for the things that go bump in the night, you really couldn't tell because the guy that was periscoping actually was running around until dawn, making, live streaming everything he possibly could and stomping around. And it was pretty disruptive. But beyond that, it was a fantastic night. And then the next day, they allowed us to utilize their equipment. And that's when we ended up in the room past the Eleanor room. It was kind of, at the time, it was just kind of a big empty room. And it was my first time using an obelisk. And we were getting hits from James, or Jonathan, the little boy from up in the attic, but he was talking about having been run over, etc. So again, it was one of the few places that ever scared me. Like that basement really, I wanted to get out of there. I was not the basement was not a pleasant place for me. I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. But everything else was quite interesting or fun, if you can call getting called an asshole by someone from the beyond fun. So that's it. That was my experience at the Shanley. And even today, they are live on Facebook. They just got notified that there's one of the big shows is coming to film there. Let's see if I can find it. But yeah, we had a great time, and that does it for the presentation. What do you guys think?
Well, I see Erica had a comment here that they also had fun at the Shanley. They got REM pod activity in the working girls area with other toys going off by themselves on the bed. So I think it seems like an interesting place. I'd like to get there one of these days.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's in our radius, it's not that far. From South Central PA to get to southeastern New York, it's only a couple hours, and we've driven further. So it's got to happen sooner than later. I agree with you there. With everybody else in the team going already, or most everybody going already, it's time to get there. I have a question, David, and maybe this might not be relevant anymore based on what your time there was, but how many rooms are there in this hotel? Do you remember, was it 20, 30 rooms, or is it kind of like a boutique where it's smaller?
No, it's much smaller. I don't know if you can rent out the gentleman's quarters, but at the time upstairs there were I think there were only 5 rooms at the time I was there. I think there's considerably more now, but nothing. I mean, it's a country inn, but Mappinock, New York is. I don't know if it's considered Hudson River Valley or not, but I know like our trip started out at the Great Pumpkin Blaze at the Great Pumpkin Blaze over near West Point, and then we came across to there. But it's not that far, and as far as size, I would be shocked if there was more than 10 or 12 rooms.
Okay. And I'm assuming that it's the town where the sidewalks roll up at dark, not much to do elsewise. So not a lot of noise pollution, that kind of stuff.
Oh, no, it sits across from I don't know if it's a defunct factory, but I know it sits across from a big factory building. And I think it's the second biggest structure in the town beyond the Walmart, which is right around the corner.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, the waiver for them that I mentioned. Let's see. The investigations go from 8 to midnight. They provide the equipment. Let's see. Nobody under age 13 is permitted to be on site, or under the 18 is allowed without adult supervision. No smoking. No smudging, incense, or candle burning inside the hotel. That's a big one. No alcohol or drugs, no one under the influence, no weapons, no spirit boards, again, so it's pretty comprehensive for what it is. Oh, and you can rent the gentleman's quarters. The gentleman's quarters can sleep up to 10 guests for a flat fee of $750. So, I mean, it was the place to be. They were socialites, effectively socialites. Well, at least James was from New York, and Beatrice was as well. She came from an affluent family, from what I could tell, and brought her sister up with her because, for whatever reason, James wanted to get out of the city, and they bought this hotel, which is commonly, and I did the same thing, which is commonly misconstrued or confused with the Shanley Hotel of Stephen King fame and The Shining fame.
That's a little further away.
Yeah. It's not drivable.
Yeah, Estes Park, Colorado is definitely a little further away.
But it is drivable, but not close.
I can tell you how long it takes to drive there. I retired from Fort Carson, so it took me quite a length of time to get from point A to point B. But yeah, now our group, Erica is part of our John Nix New Jersey team, and she was up there, was part of our group that was up there. Her and her husband Tim, and Matt and Chloe. I think that was it. I think only 4 ended up there.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And they had, as Erica said, they had a good time. Yeah, I think Missy and Jerry were supposed to go, but they ended up having to cancel. But yeah, we had just had a fantastic time up there. The bordello and just the stories that went with it, and the ownership was the ownership was the big thing, because the owner met us there that night, and at the time, I don't know if it's the same ownership, but she was incredibly engaging, and she made you feel at home, give you a chance to go shop through the gift shop, and it was very much like Booby's Brewery, where they have a book to sign in at, and that was your sign in, and it was also a case where they didn't give you, you didn't have a key to the exterior door. So like, we got there, we checked in, and then we tried to come back we went into town to eat, and we came back, we tried to get in prior to the hunt, or prior to the investigation, and it was locked. We ended up having to sit on the porch until somebody showed up to let us in. Does that sound familiar?
Every other Saturday.
Mm-hmm. So what was your most interesting experience with that, David? I mean, you listed a couple, but which really shook you the most?
Well, the basement. Like, when we walked into the basement, it was something that they made us feel, that our hosts had made us feel like they never did. That you typically weren't allowed to go down the basement. And I don't know if that's true to this day or not. But when we got down there, like, the interaction between the gentleman's quarters and the basement was the most confrontational I've felt, and that's saying a lot for everything that we've done. But it was as the word, as all these derogatory terms came through the spirit box when the young lady that I was with was in the gentleman's quarters with me, and then, like, for example, with the medium, it just kept getting more and more. I keep using the word confrontational, but like, it just kept getting more and more, like, ramping up, and everything was based on, like, guiding us to the basement. And he asked, if you want us to go to the basement, give us a sign. And there was a big thump on the roof on the main room, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're going to the basement next. Also, the one room that I wouldn't get into, at least with the lights on, was the altar room with the scrying mirror. Everybody is well aware how I feel about mirrors. And and like sitting there. If you, I have a picture in the camera roll of a young lady. There was only two people supposed to be in the picture, and you have a third face off of her left shoulder. People have reported, sitting there and watching themselves grow older in that room. Something happened, I think, that night that freaked somebody out in the group that I was with. I wouldn't have any part of it. You guys know how I am with mirrors, but it was. That's it. That's the picture. So the lady in the middle and the woman on the right is the one taking the picture, and there was nobody on the left. And as you can see, there's a face there, and that came from there. That came from the Shanley's Facebook. Somebody had sent that back to them, evidence that they had uncovered when they went through their camera rolls. And again, I stayed out of there. And then when we went to the basement, I remember there was a cipher lock or like a digital lock to get us down into the basement. We went down into the basement, and as soon as we walked in, it was like a palpable feeling of dread. And like I said, the young lady that I was with, not given to fits of emotion like that. Like tears were just streaming down her face. And it was, again, very confrontational between the medium and whatever we were interacting with. And then I don't remember what the culminating event was when I finally threw the flag up and I was like, I'm done, I'm out. And, I walked out, but like, it was just, again, at the time, I would probably say I was scared because I just didn't know. I didn't understand. I didn't know what was going on. And it was something else.
Interesting. David, you keep saying,
and then the rest of the night went like a regular night of food.
You keep saying you don't like mirrors, but then you have 3 pictures of yourself with mirrors here. How'd that happen?
I do. I was just like at my size at the time. I was looking to see how much of the mirror I could take up. I don't know, like the mirror. The mirror on the right is the scrying mirror in the altar room. The other two, I think if that's the same mirror, taken one in the morning and one in the evening. Obviously the Adidas hoodie was in the morning, and the red hoodie was in the evening. It was just I don't know. I was just trying to take pictures, all the pictures I could, hoping to catch something. And a couple of them ended up with me being in the mirror. And obviously that didn't work out real well.
So what's you were there, neither of us were there. What's your opinion? Is it haunted? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it is. I believe there is a lot going on between the history and just the people that left huge imprints there. If it's not Eleanor Roosevelt in that room, if it's not Eleanor Roosevelt in that room, there definitely is something in that room. And down in the basement, and definitely up in the bordello, and you just felt the presence. And I'm not somebody who typically talks like that, but you just felt that you weren't alone ever in this place. And even to the attic, where at the time, again, it was unfinished, but there were stories of being able to roll a ball across the attic and have it returned to you. So if Jonathan was up there wanting to play ball or what have you, it's always it's a place that I highly recommend everybody experience, especially if you're on the East Coast, and it's drivable for you. Experience it. Just go and get your own read on it. But it was definitely one of my, it'll probably always be one of my top 3 places that I've been.
Cool. I think a lot of it too comes down to intent. I happened to catch a Kenny Biddle thing yesterday that he posted from the Shanley, or having gone to the Shanley, and he didn't have very much activity at all. But that's the way he goes into things, I would say. So.
Well, that's
well, yeah, and it's just like everything else. It's hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. exactly.
You know, I mean, we went to Hinsdale, which we're heading back to in August, but we went to Hinsdale. Was it last year or was it the year before?
Year before.
I guess it would be 2 years ago now. Yeah. And I mean, when we were in Hinsdale, one of the more active places that we've reportedly gone, we got absolutely nothing. So it's hard to draw an experience on. If you get nothing, it's hard to like make a determination on a place after one visit. I mean, if you get nothing, you don't give it a second chance, or because there's often a lot of factors that go into what happens if somebody's having a bad day, if somebody's blocking, if somebody's not open to the experience. Next thing you know, that could be a deciding factor in whether or not you get something.
So I'm just going to go ahead and put up the Shanley's website information here. Maybe.
Yep, it's thehauntedShanleyHotel.com.
There we go.
Yep, go visit them. It's thehauntedShanleyHotel.com. Booking and gift certificates and the rooms are laid out. So you have so there's the three girls in the bordello. It was Aunt Anna, Maddie, and Rosie. And then you have the Roosevelt room, Oscar Grover. There's the Rose room, Silent room, Esther's room, Gentleman's quarters. So I mean, they have, I guess, 7 featured rooms. So I don't know if the attic has anything in it as yet. And then it has all of the, obviously, their partnership with Ghost Hunt USA is no more because Ghost Hunt USA is no more. But I'm certain with their reputation that they have guides and mediums available to lead your investigations, and it's absolutely worth it. The price point is not outrageous, especially with having a room. You get a room. Now they also do offer the ability to do day tours and non-sleepover. Like you can do investigations without actually staying there. And they have special events, like they have events for the largest ghost hunt, or the world's largest ghost hunt is one of their events that they take part in. They have their Halloween specials. They have specials every month. If you just go to their website and check them out.
Okay.
And they also have the history on it, which I summarized as eloquently as possible. I guess that's it for the Shanley. It's a great place. It's a really has a really colorful history. 100 almost 200 years of history. So just go experience it.
Okay. I think you did a nice job with the history, David. You filled in a lot of blanks for me, so I appreciate that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, me too. Thank you.
All right.
So we have some stuff coming up for us as a team, and this weekend, as we're finally doing a live episode, we can say something is happening this weekend and not be ahead of the game. But Saturday the 13th, we are partnering with our friends from Dover Paranormal as what we're calling a para-unity investigation. The two teams will come together and investigate the Boobies Brewery site throughout the evening and early morning, as it may go to. And then coming up the weekends after, on May 20th, we have a public opportunity. So tickets are available below at Saver Stub or at the Boobies Brewery website. Rolling over to June 10th and also June 24th. So pretty much every other weekend coming up. And as we get into the summer, we'll still keep the schedule. So when you're out looking for something to do, cool in the evenings, come have dinner at the brewery, and then come hang out with us after and let's investigate the place. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, and more dates are coming shortly after as we move up the calendar a little bit. One thing I do want to say about what's coming up and something I think we're going to start to move pretty heavily to publicize is we have a special event Labor Day weekend with the Red Mill in New Jersey and Daryl Marston. We're going to have the place to ourselves for the evening. It's a big public opportunity to get out and meet Daryl, who's world renowned and now an author as well. So his book is coming out very, very soon. But you know him from Ghost Hunters on AMC or AME, sorry. And a really great guy to hang out with, and super, super fun evening there with the whole place to ourselves. It's a massive complex. So we got a lot going on. So more of that will be coming soon, but tickets are available there at the Red Mill site, and get them while you can. They're starting to move quickly. So, and then there's the other ways to connect with us via our regular social media sites. So obviously you found us on Facebook to see this, and also our YouTube channel, but we do have a TikTok presence at The Real Jotnix Paranormal, Instagram at Jotnix_paranormal as well. So if you like anything you saw here tonight, leave us a message, drop us a line. If there's anything you think we should be talking about coming up, let us know. I have the next episode next week, and I can tell you we are going to be talking about some voodoo. Something a little on the darker side, perhaps, and maybe even some voodoo dolls and how they can relate to the paranormal field. So it's a special interest of mine for many, many years. So I'm finally getting a chance to dig into a little bit more and share some knowledge. So looking forward to next week. And we're here every Tuesday evening, right around 9:30. So feel free to step in. Again, leave us some comments. Let us know how we're doing. We obviously need some feedback. Thanks, David, for your knowledge and experience and expertise of the Shanley. It's such a cool place. We're all looking forward to getting there. Are you willing to go back? If we go, Dave?
Oh, I'm willing to go back, especially now that I know what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm especially now that I know what I'm doing. I'm not just there. I'm not just there, kind of experiencing it. At least I know what I'm looking at, and I know what how to react in situations, and not just I'm not a tourist. You know what I mean?
Right. Not a novice anymore. That's for sure. Okay. I do remind everybody too, the Ghostly Truth, our limited series, is coming still. There is a writer's strike going on right now. So, our production team is in solidarity with the writers, and it might take a little longer to get this up, but we are working on post-production now. Some editing still going through. So and anybody who's ever done this knows it takes time. And we're getting there. It is coming. I promise. And we'll be very, very soon. But keep an eye out. We got some cool stuff coming from that first episode of the Bainbridge Inn.
Very good.
Yeah, I think that's all we got, right, guys?
I think that's it. Come out and see us at Boobies. Reach out to us. Like Jamie said, give us feedback. We'd appreciate it. So,
absolutely. Congratulations, guys. We survived a live episode. Holy cow.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll see everybody next week.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Yep.